looking at the best cases available right now for our 2024 edition of the Best Cases Roundup. We took a year off, so it's good to be back to it. We broke back into case reviews this year and have added to our case collection. It's not a problem if you acknowledge it. At least that's what I tell myself. This roundup highlights the best cases we think are available in 2024 based on our thermal benchmarks, acoustic tests, build quality evaluation, and cable management testing. And this year was packed with excellent cases, but of course, a few that were really problematic as well. And the difference for the best cases roundup this year is that we have a lot more additional test data than we've ever had for the previous ones, so let's get into it. We brought you this video with our brand new premium dice sets for tabletop gaming, like Dungeons & Dragons, Magic, and other games. These include our GN Inductor dice that use actual e-waste inductors, and our Snowflake dice with tiny Snowflake the cats embedded within the sharp edge resin dice on store.gamersnexus.net. And you'll get extremely unique, high-quality dice with custom wooden boxes and roll trays, cards usable in Magic the Gathering games, and 7 types of dice commonly found in tabletop games. The inductor dice use copper colored lettering with a blue tint resin and embedded e-waste inductors, while the Snowflake dice set includes not only the Snowflake miniatures embedded within, but also a Snowflake Heedless One card. The inductor dice come with a goblin creature token that Andrew on the team did the 3D art for. Support our work directly and help reduce our reliance on third-party advertisers by visiting store.gamersnexus.net. All right, so welcome back to our Best of Roundup series. These are our favorite to work on for the year. It's something that I like a lot because we get to crawl back through all the stuff we've looked at in the last year, look at the current products that are available, and just really filter through. It's a good reminder of the things that were actually good in the year. So these pieces are intended to help people who have been maybe not fully paying attention throughout the year. Maybe you don't build a computer except for every 2 or 3 years, and it'll get you up to speed quickly, serve as a launching point, and then in the description below we have the links to all the standalone reviews for each of the cases we're talking about today. So if any of these interest you and you want the full nuance, including all of the downsides and the negatives, then you can check out the individual reviews for more on each of the cases. This, however, is going to be really focused on a flyover, which means we're not as charts heavy as in the reviews. So a little bit of a different audience we target with these best of roundups because it's meant to just help people get back in touch with what's on the market now. So we've already published best CPUs. That's on the channel. And it's the same thing that applies here where sometimes the best case, or in that situation, the best CPU didn't come out in 2024. It came out prior. And it's the same situation here where we look at everything that you can buy now, not just what launched this year, and then figure out what makes the most sense based on that, because a lot of this is based on price too. So we launched heavy back in the case reviews this year, and it's time now to get into the Best of Roundup series. Let's get into it. Best overall is difficult to award this year, which is a great problem to have. That means cases don't suck. This category requires a strong offering on all fronts: value, thermal performance, acoustic performance, aesthetics, build quality, ease of installation features, and cable management. We're giving it to the Fractal North and North XL. Although other cases are superior in some individual situations, like the Antec Flux Pro by a slim margin in thermals, or the HAVN HS420 in mechanical aspects, the North and North XL are masterful overall executions of a standard computer case. This is bolstered by prices that have been lower in recent weeks. We've seen them as low as $125 to $140 for the North. The Fractal North was the first case to successfully kick off the wooden trend at scale, with everyone else in the industry scrambling to follow. Inwin gets credit for initially attempting this years ago, but it failed to find a way to bring it to market and execute. Fractal pulled it all together and cleaned up the idea. The North comes with either a glass or mesh side panel, which includes options for additional side mounts to further boost cooling performance. Actually, in our recent tour of Wendell's offices, you can see such a configuration for one of his machines. Fractal's fan support on the XL is also effectively whatever you want it to be. The company cleverly uses standard hole spacing for its rear ventilation, and that includes, surprisingly, even the PCIe slot covers and the top of the power supply shroud, so you can mount a fan basically anywhere you want in the case. The cooling options are really opened up because of this. Ease of installation options are also great. Because the top panel so easily slides off to remove, and because Fractal doesn't put a ton of other metals in the way, you can get clear access through the top of the case for builds. The extra width in the XL also makes larger radiators easier to work with up top, reducing board clearance issues. The North XL is what we prefer to the North, but both are good. Mostly our preference, Patrick and I, is because of the increased size for easier building and our style of build. Both are good takes on the theme though. Visually, the wood doesn't look like the slapped-on vinyl style in other cases. It looks more purposeful. Fractal also does great work mixing different tone wood coloring with different panel coloring, including matching the black case with gold accents and the white case with silver accents. And finally, even in cooling performance, the North XL is routinely at the top of the charts for thermal benchmarks. It's not the #1 best, that'll go to 2 other cases this year, but it's regularly at the top. And that, plus all the other features, plus the value, get the North cases the best overall award. The next award is for the best mechanical design, which we give to cases that may not have won in other categories, but truly innovated for the physical and mechanical elements of the case. This year, it goes to newcomer HAVN and their HS420. The HS420 exhibits a mastery of mechanical features. The HS420 doesn't include fans, it's not fully airflow focused, and it's not cheap at $200 for the horizontal GPU model. That makes it a tough fit for any of our price and performance focused award categories, but we think it needs to be recognized because it's one of the most interesting and just downright good cases that we've reviewed this year. Mechanically, it's excellent. The curved tempered glass panel is the most significant feature here. The panel is installed by sliding it back and down into the case on wheels, where it then comes to rest on the bottom edge of the chassis. It takes some getting used to, but it's a clever and secure way of getting the huge glass pane seated. It's also proven to be durable, surviving multiple build and unbuild cycles through the filming processes without serious wear. There was a lot of thought put into airflow as well, something we illustrated in animations. The HS420 vGPU includes a curved glass deflector that's intended to direct incoming air around and into vertically mounted GPUs. It was a clever idea and a fresh approach, which we appreciated, but it didn't help performance in our test system. That's also why we're specifically giving the award to the $200 base model, which is cheaper and sheds the hardware that just didn't really do anything in our testing. Even with the base model though, HAVN planned for an unusual airflow pattern with intake at the bottom of the rear panel and exhaust at the top of the same rear panel, and included 120mm plates on each mount that are isolated with rubber vibration damping. In fact, every fan tray is padded with rubber, including the side mount that doubles as drive storage. The drive storage alone is pretty cool. It creates a spine-like structure, it offers a lot of drive support as far as modern cases go, and it's easy to be removed if you want to swap it for fans instead. The case's construction is clever and precise in areas like the tightly spaced storage bays at the front and the rounded edges of the power supply shroud and motherboard tray. The simple GPU support that ships with the non-vGPU case variant is one of the sturdiest we've seen, cast from solid metal and braced against the power supply and cabling shroud. The cable channels are not only labeled, but color-coded in what we think is an excellent ease of installation feature, especially for new builders who might need the help to understand where to route the cables. There are a ton of other small attention to detail elements too, like the fact that HAVN matched the structural reinforcement for panels to align with the fan hubs or the dead zone rather than obstructing intake. And you can check our review for all the other details, including our full charts with 7 or 8 fan configurations. Before closing out this category though, we want to give some recognition as an honorable mention or a runner-up to the Silverstone Alta D1. The Alta D1 is an $800 Halo product that has finally hit the retail market following our first encounter with it at Computex 2023 and again at 2024. The price is ridiculous, and very few people will buy the case. But the mechanical design hopefully inspires some of the more affordable cases. It has modular bays on rails everywhere, including 5 1/4 drive support, socketable radiators, a slide-out motherboard tray, SSI EEB support, 11 expansion slots, large fan mounts, repositionable power supplies, and a true home server setup. It's beyond what we could recommend in any serious review, if only for the price. But we may come up with a fun project for the D1 in the future. And we respect its mechanical design. Hopefully some of that can be brought to more affordable cases. We've had a category for years for the best budget case, but the amount of quality cases in the $60 price point and under has really declined in recent years. Honestly, at or below 60 right now, we think used cases are typically a higher quality and a better deal than something new at the same price. So, this category has become Best Sub $100 Case, which we're giving to the Lian-Li Lancool 207. When we were deciding this year's winners, although there are a lot of sub $100 cases, there just aren't any that in totality defeat the Lian-Li Lancool 207, in our opinions. In the current market, $80 is dirt cheap for a name brand case, and there are cheaper cases available from companies like Sama and DIY PC, but we're confident that none of them come close to the 207's frequently chart-topping thermal performance. When we reviewed the Silverstone 515XR, we were aware that Silverstone had pulled out all the stops to offer a case with 4 fans at $68, but the performance gap between it and the 207 is massive. There's also differences in quality of life features. The same goes for the Phanteks XT Pro Ultra and the Montec XR, both of which we've recently added to our charts. The Montec XR is supposed to be closer to $60, but it's been out of stock lately and often more expensive when it is available. We've seen it in the 70s to 80s. The 207 is a solidly built case with sturdy toolless panels, which is unusual at this price point. The most unusual aspect, though, is at the bottom of the case, where 2 120mm intake fans are positioned directly underneath the GPU, while the power supply is mounted at the front with an extension cord. The shroud is ventilated on both sides as well as the rear in order to provide an airflow path for the bottom intake fans. Although adding drives and cables reduces that ventilation, the ample intake through the rear of the case counters this. In addition to the 2 bottom intake fans, 2 140mm ARGB front intake fans are included with the case. They may not sound significant individually, but the fact that the 207 has a full suite of basic quality of life features like reusable and bridgeless expansion slot covers, rubber grommets for cable cutouts, a USB Type-C port, ARGB fans, built-in Velcro straps, and toolless panels is impressive in combination with its price and its thermal performance. It's rare to see that full combo in a case, especially one which is a top thermal performer. The fact that the 207 also wins our objective numbers-based best thermals category is also part of why it lands here. We have 2 big issues with the 207. First, the toolless side panel won't stay on without meticulous cable management. There's no way around this, but sticking to flat cables and minimizing the number of cables used will help. There's also room to improve power supply cooling in the case, as most power supplies will be oriented fan side down with barely any clearance above the table surface. The cable management is the one to be aware of. You can watch our review for more on that, as well as some other smaller notes like dust filtration in the rear bottom intake. Still, at $80, Lian-Li is being brutally competitive here, so they take this category. Next up is the award for Best Mid-Range Case. We're looking for something that isn't too wild or out there. We want relatively standard, but a good price to performance and overall build quality. We're also looking for something a little bit better than the budget case. For this, we're giving it to the Antec C8 ARGB. Antec has had a strong year. It's had 2 showings this year in the list we have today, but it was the Antec C8 that first signaled to us that the company was worth paying attention to again after a decade of fading into irrelevance. MSRP is $150, the ARGB variant with fans included, but it's been long enough since the case's June launch that we're beginning to see discounts. The fanless variant is regularly available with promo codes around $100. So those 2 numbers put us in the mid-range, and the mid-range award category gives us some room to consider quality of life features, aesthetic features, and not just raw performance per dollar, and the C8 is well balanced in those categories. The C8's dual chamber layout isn't new, but Antec impressed us with the level of care that it put into details like molding text into the fan frames, color matching all the components in the white skew, and the accessory kit. It was also made to look even better considering the proximity to the Corsair 6500 launch, which this is better than. Small touches, even ones that aren't functional, add up to create a product that feels worth the price. The C8's appearance reminds us of the clean designs that made Corsair's 4000D airflow and 5000D and 7000D so appealing, but we much prefer Antec's case to the directly comparable 6500D. Functionally, the usual benefits of dual-chamber design apply here. There's plenty of space to work with in both chambers, including storage space for cables and drives. Dual-chamber cases frequently have cable channels so deep that it's difficult to reach tie points at the bottom and effectively bundle cables, but the C8's removable air duct partition, as they call it, solves that problem. The centerpiece of the C8 ARGB is the bottom fan mount, containing 2 unusual 160 by 35mm reverse blade intake fans, with an additional conventional 140mm exhaust fan at the rear of the case. These 2 160mm fans are placed over a completely open vent, meaning that the removable bottom filter is the only obstruction to incoming air. Antec was aware enough to not obstruct this intake path, unlike many other companies. This makes GPU cooling in the C8 ARGB excellent. We saw this in our charts and our thermal benchmarks. It's not always the top of the charts. It's stronger in some categories, namely GPU, than others. CPU cooling, for example, in our test setup was predictably lackluster due to the lack of front or side intake with the out-of-the-box configuration. We prefer the C8 ARGB to the fanless base model, but the less expensive SKU may make more sense for liquid-cooled builds since the ARGB's 160mm stock fans won't match any typical radiator. The case can fit up to 3 360mm radiators simultaneously, most easily in the side and the bottom slots. For air-cooled builds, the $20 upcharge for the ARGB variant with the extra fans is worth it. Many of the dual-chamber cases we've reviewed have followed the footsteps of the 011 Dynamic by not including any stock fans, so having a choice is a welcome change. Our next two awards are for thermals. The one following this is for Best Noise-Normalized Thermals, while this one is for Best Out-of-the-Box Thermals. The difference is that Noise-Normalized is focused on a specific type of situation we run, whereas Best Thermals looks for the best performer at 100% fan speeds for the case, but also just an all test broadly that we run at all fan speeds. The raw all fans maxed stock performance is a tie between the Lancool Lancool 207, represented in the sub $100 category, and the Antec Flux Pro, represented in the next one. These cases have similar layouts, each with front intake fans behind a mesh panel and bottom intake fans mounted on top of a ventilated power supply shroud. Our test bench hardware uses air cooling with a flow-through GPU cooler and a CPU tower cooler, which we've chosen to be as broadly representative as possible and as controllable as possible. This hardware benefits from simple, direct airflow. Cool air from the front for the CPU, cool air from the bottom for the GPU, and you end up with a good solution. These two cases are the ideal realization of that airflow layout. The Flux Pro and Lancool 207 both averaged 38 degrees Celsius above ambient all-core and 42 degrees on just the P-cores. Fractal's long-time leading Torrent and North XL, the newer one, are both within 1 degree of this result, but the Flux Pro and the 207 pull ahead in other categories. Moving to GPU thermals, both the Flux Pro and the Lancool 207 averaged exactly 38.2 degrees above ambient, although the 207's memory temperature averaged slightly better at 41 degrees versus 43, while the Flux Pro's hotspot temperature was a little lower. The Flux Pro's stock configuration is set up to mount the power supply rotated 90 degrees in Antec's I-shift mount, but we found that mounting the power supply in a more typical orientation with the plug at the rear of the case slightly lowered overall GPU temperatures for a best case 37 degree delta above ambient. The 207, on the other hand, logged our best temperatures so far, from the VRM and RAM sensors at 21 and 17 degrees above ambient respectively. These two cases are extremely close in performance, and we can't just declare one winner between the two of them. The next award is for Best Noise-Normalized Thermals. This is a pure performance-driven category, but it combines two metrics, which is acoustics and thermals. Fortunately, its winner is also just a good standard case to build in. The Antec Flux Pro wins this one. Noise-normalized thermal tests are the most important performance benchmarks we run on cases. With the current iteration of our bench, we place the case on a table in our hemi-anechoic chamber with the mic pointed directly at the center of the front panel from 1 meter away. Then we lower the speed of the case's stock fans in tandem until we hit our chosen noise threshold of 27 dBA SPL. This allows us to level the playing field so that the cases with the loudest fans don't automatically just land at the top of every single chart by brute force. It creates a control. The Flux Pro's front panel doesn't block much noise, but it's so well ventilated that the three 140mm front intake fans don't need to work that hard and don't generate much noise to begin with. There isn't much resistance, and so they can spin slower, while the two 120mm shroud top fans assist with GPU cooling. The Flux Pro's PSU shroud is open on all sides, including the bottom, which maximizes airflow without directing significantly more noise towards our mic. CPU thermals are tied at the top of the chart with the Lancool 207 at 41 degrees Celsius above ambient all core and 45 on just the P cores. Some of our other high-performing cases like the North XL and Torrent came close, and the Lancool 216 is tied in this one, but the Flux Pro is the best overall when taking all results into account. In the noise-normalized GPU thermal test, it outperforms the Lancool 207 and it ties the Torrent for GPU die temperature. In VRM and DDR5 memory thermals, the Flux Pro is the chart leader by a technicality, but again is functionally tied with the 207. Both the Flux Pro and the 207 offer excellent cooling at the noise levels, but the Flux Pro technically takes more lead spots than the 207. The 207 is definitely well represented already though. We also know from our full speed results that it's possible that the Flux Pro could perform even better with its power supply mounted in the typical orientation rather than the stock rotated I-shift mount. The Flux Pro was an excellent return to form for Antec and offers a standard layout case for strong fundamentals. It's deserving of the noise-normalized victory while still offering the basics and foundation you need for just a good standard PC build in a non-dual chamber case, in a nice break from what has become a trend. Our most innovative case award goes to the case that has the newest and most different design, even if it doesn't work perfectly, because innovation pushes the industry forward. This goes to the Meshless AIO Mini ITX case. Despite its generic, boxy exterior, the Meshless AIO is one of the most innovative cases we've ever reviewed. The Meshless AIO, which now is apparently listed with a formal launch name of the MD280, is built around a cylindrical cross-flow fan, like a smaller version of the fan that you might find in a mini split wall unit. We found the case design curious enough that we built this 3D animation to help explain and educate on how it works. You can find this in the full review that we did with a lot of detail. It's actually a really cool video to work on. The basics, though, are that the cross-flow fan shoots hot air out at the upper edge of the side panel and theoretically pulls in cool air everywhere else. We even did Schlieren imaging on this one. It pushes cool air towards the GPU fans from the side panel, through the radiator without any axial fans mounted to it, and over the motherboard and power supply from a tiny strip of ventilation along the bottom edge of the case. In practice, we found that the GPU could be better cooled by taping a couple of normal 120mm case fans to the top of the case, but these had some other downsides in other tests. Thermal performance was at least adequate, and considering there was a single fan handling everything, it was overall impressive for what was done on a single fan that you might not normally find in a PC case. We were concerned about the power supply's lack of direct access to cool air, but otherwise, everything was getting fed air. There are some other creative aspects to the MD280's construction outside of the fan, and that's ultimately what got it the most innovative award. The main portion of the case is a single piece of extruded aluminum, and other elements like the fan, the radiator, glass side panel, and handle slide into the open ends. This is an excellent compact design, and it works well. Another cool feature is the lever that's accessible from the rear of the case, working to slide the PCIe riser cable up and down. This presses the slot into place in sort of a reverse approach, which improves the accessibility and ease of installation. It's an ambitious and creative project, especially since Meshless Design informed us that it's an independent outfit driven by one man, Hank Lin. This is the work of an engineer who turned an idea into an actual product with overall good execution. Now, we need to issue a buyer beware warning because it looks like the Meshless AIO's price has been increased. When we looked at it, it wasn't formally out yet, but it's been increased to $450, which is a huge jump from what we were expecting. And we have no way of vouching for the company's ability to deliver on pre-orders yet. Unfortunately, that price kills the case for us, as there are simply too many good other competitors in ITX at half the price. But it still gets an innovation award, and we hope some of these ideas are found elsewhere in the industry. We have an honorable mention for this category as well. Inwin's Dubilee case is an ATX enclosure. It's an anagram of iBuild, an abbreviation for Inwin's DIY iBuild iShare brand, as well as an abbreviation for Dubilee. So they put a lot of work into the name, but it's also a cool case. The instruction manual comes in the form of a dedicated single-purpose app with animated 3D renders, which is absolutely required if you order the flat-packed build-it-yourself DIY edition. It's pretty cool that they're flat pack shipping some of these cases. Definitely saves a ton on the space. And if you like building something actually from scratch, you do get the fuller experience with it. It's just more work for you. We like the Dubilee though for its unique look, high build quality and high quality materials, and the modularity of the paneling. That it flat packs means everything pulls apart pretty easily. And it's also a cool aspect to the case, creating a fuller DIY experience. The color scheme is also different. They have a sharp silver and orange, which we like, and a Noctua style cream and brown with gold screws. The case doesn't win over the Meshless AIO for innovation, but we like it enough that it deserves a mention. The biggest disappointment is up next. There are a lot of options to consider for this category. Between the GameMax hype, GameMax is nowhere to change the world for good. The Trike's Luca L70, the Corsair 6500, bending like a banana, as Kingpin would say. And more cases. We had our work cut out for us with this one. And our congratulations to Corsair for winning it with the 6500 series of cases. Although Trix's case was a mess, it ultimately didn't have the same expectations attached to it as Corsair. To be a disappointment requires some level of expectation. Corsair wins the award handily. Broadly speaking, Corsair has continued to disappoint ever since it took on huge investment. Like the assets of its corporate overlords, its disappointments are diversified. They bought Origin PC, which sold us a $6,600 computer that had the CPU underclocked by a gigahertz out of the box. They made the A500 air cooler, which had heat pipes so unlevel that they sheared our pressure paper. But the company also shipped some excellent products in recent years, and those came from its case division. The Corsair 4000D was commonly $80, and it was one of the best sub-$100 cases available for a long time. The 5000D was an okay follow-up to that, scaling up the useful features to a larger size. Corsair was finally doing well with cases again, following a long drought of basically nothing. But then it launched the 6500 series this year, attempting to jump onto a hype train that had already left the station, and they did so with substandard build quality. The Corsair 6500D and 6500X were $200 without fans, both featuring superbly bendy panels without any reinforcement. We found this totally unacceptable for a $200 so-called premium case. There were lots of plastics, misaligned panels, and build quality issues. The 6500D had a number of slapped-on features that didn't work together. They tried to accommodate back-connect motherboards, but doing so required punching what seemed like a completely random hole into a drive cage, which was then entirely left out of the original manual. If you used one of Corsair's own shift power supplies, you'd have to remove the drive cages completely and move to only NVMe drives. We found build quality issues, design oversight, and a high price to be not only disqualifying from any considerations on our list, but also deserving of the biggest disappointment after falling from the grace of the 4000D. Corsair is a big company, and it has the resources to fix this, but it's a matter of whether they choose to do so. Since our critical review, Corsair has dropped the price of the 6500D closer to $150, and it's still worse than an Antec C8 ARGB, which often costs the same or less. And that's just embarrassing for what was a $200 premium, as they called it, case. Now, there are a ton of cases that are worth honorable mentions as well. We had a few scattered throughout here. One of them is the Light-Based 600 that's behind me, where this case does some really cool things. We didn't think it cracked into any of the categories on its own, where each of them had kind of a clear and distinct winner for the reasons we listed, but it is also a case that's worth looking into. And that's not the only one that fits into that kind of grouping of cases that are good and worth paying attention to, but just didn't quite tick all the boxes to hit the best. And remember, a lot of this is subjective too. We have a couple objective categories in here, though I think it was two for thermals, but some of it is based on bigger picture stuff and just our experience and what we think makes for a good computer case. So a lot of other interesting ones. You can check the reviews playlist on the channel if you want to get access to all of them. They're all up already. We have plenty more coming. And we've also got some more best of roundups, including a best CPU coolers roundup, where we're running a ton of stuff through right now to get an updated recap. We have dozens of coolers tested on our older 200-watt AM4 platform. Currently, we are updating with a 250-watt Intel platform as well, just to kind of get the higher heat load situation there represented as well. So check back for that. Thanks for watching. As always, we're excited to be back to the case reviews, which we started earlier this year, but also just the best of series. And check back in for more. Subscribe. As always, you can go to store.gamersnexus.net if you'd like to help us out directly in maintaining our next year of in-depth case reviews, where everything you buy from the store directly helps fund our testing efforts, testing time for the team, and equipment purchases. So check out the dice, our mod mats, our soldering and project mats, and other products on the store. We'll see you all next time.